Good afternoon and welcome to a special Brattleboro Selectboard meeting here on BCTV. This is Tim Johnson. The first item on tonight's agenda, or this afternoon's agenda, an update on those downtown traffic lights with representatives of the Vermont Agency of Transportation and other assorted people. An update on the FY12 utilities budget. The board will discuss that and also set the annual town meeting and representative town meeting warning. All that and more coming up. Stay warm, and the Brattleboro Selectboard is next on BCTV.
Good afternoon, and welcome to our special meeting on January 24th. Has our meeting been officially warned?
Yes, it has.
Okay, I'm convening the meeting, and one of the things I'll get right into before we talk with Ken Upmall and the staff is public participation. If there is anyone here to talk about issues that are not on our brief agenda here today, if you come up to the microphone and give us your name and the town that you're from, and we'll give you about 2 minutes. So obviously everyone's here to talk about what's on our agenda. I want to make it clear to everyone here today that Ken Upmall from the state, who is heading up this project, is here on an information gathering trip down here this afternoon. And so we want to make sure that we keep it in that vein. There are some things that Ken will be going over with us that a lot of people may not be aware of. So patience today and understanding of what this is all about. So I'm going to turn this over to Ken at this point to give us an overview before we start taking questions from the public and the board.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Richard said, I'm Ken Upmall. Some of you may know me from the past, some of you may not. I'm the project manager on the Main Street reconstruction project here. And we've come down today to solicit input from the public on some of the issues that are associated with the signal operations out there in the project, and see what we can't do to mitigate any of these issues. The long-awaited project is now near completion, but what I'd like to express right now is the fact that not every component to the traffic system is fully installed at this time. Unfortunately, we have very limited construction seasons, and snow flew, and some of the interconnect devices to the system are not completely installed yet, and are still going to take a little time before that's complete. And there was also some railroad strobe lights that are yet to be installed. So the system's near complete, and we're getting ready to test some of this stuff, but it's not complete today. So please understand that. The project was somewhat challenging from, I think a lot of the emphasis on the project focused about improving Malfunction Junction, or the intersection US 5, Vermont 119, and 142. And as I said, it's a very conflicting geometry with all the different accesses and legs of the intersection, combined with the co-op that's down there. And the old intersection level of service prior to the design was a level of service F, and the design was to provide improved level of service and safety for the intersection and bring it up to a level of service D. I know that when I first began working on this project, I researched all the history to it. I read the 502 manuscripts, and I read all the material that the previous project manager had put together. And one of the things that I noticed, and one of the big challenges to this project, was the fact that there was different concerns by different people in the town. The 502 manuscript was very interesting because some people really emphasized the need for pedestrian mobility and really weren't concerned with cars. Almost the fact that they thought Main Street, I think one person thought Main Street should be pedestrian traffic only, like Church Street in Burlington. And some of the concerns that would be expected were people were only concerned with traffic, vehicular mobility. And of course, that was a concern. And some of the people were concerned with safety issues, not only associated with vehicular traffic, but pedestrians. So as we took this project on, we knew that we weren't going to be able to satisfy 100% of everybody's concerns with all the different issues. What our primary goal was to try to balance the needs of all those concerned and try to reach some kind of compromise that improved everybody's concerns as much as possible. And certainly that's a challenge when you run into an intersection like Malfunction Junction with 5 legs and all the traffic demands on it, US 5, principal arterial in the state of Vermont, and the downtown historic nature of Brattleboro with all the pedestrian and needs and with all the businesses. So what we did was we came up with a design that we felt best balanced all those needs together.
Ken, if I could ask you to either go over to the microphone because the BCTV is having trouble picking you up, or if you can take the seat right in the center. You don't have to be standing for your presentation. If you'd like to go over and stand at the mic, that would be okay.
So with that, I'm here today with V-Trans representatives to solicit input from you folks and explain as we go down some of the issues and some of the things that we think we can do to solve some of these issues. So with that, I'm going to introduce the gentleman right to my right here in the black coat. This is Van Kukoyanakis, and he is our consulting engineer for the project. To his right is Chris Barker. He's our V-Trans resident construction engineer. And to his right is Bruce Nyquist, one of our program managers with the highway safety section. So I think maybe what we should do is maybe solicit questions, and then thereafter stand on that with any other additional issues that we've already discussed.
Okay. Well, what we'll do at this point, and one of the things that there's an educational component here that maybe Van or you will talk about a little bit later. What we'll do is we'll entertain questions from the board, and then we'll take questions from the public, which is our normal protocol. So I will open it up to the board for questions, or if they want to acquiesce to the public, that's fine also. So anyone from the public who has a question, if you please come up to the microphone, state your name and the town that you're from, and have your question asked to Ken or the board.
Hi, I'm Gail Nunziata, and I live in Brattleboro. A couple things. First of all, I'd like to say that the communication during the project was terrific, and we thank you all for that, and it helped just keep the downtown bubbling along because people were not rising to the level of panic that they thought they would over whether or not they'd be able to keep their businesses open. So we think that was great. What I would say is that the level of communication since then could have been a little bit better. Because today you're saying that there are certain components of the project that aren't even complete. So it's hard to know, where we're at and how to ask you to improve certain parts of it if you're not done yet. So it'd be nice to know what's still to come, and if those things that are still to come would take care of all the problems, you know, that are perceived, then we wouldn't even have to be having this meeting, really. And the other thing is, personally for me, where I work down at the Latches, I'm just wondering if the intersection of Flat Street and Main Street is one of the components that's yet to come, because that's been flashing for a long time. And the third thing I'd like to say is that I wish we could think of a new name and not call it Malfunction Junction anymore. But that's just personal. Thanks.
You can actually sit there if you want, or you can stand. As long as you're using the mic, that's the issue. That microphone will allow the... I think it is.
It doesn't amplify, it's for recording purposes.
Is this working now?
Yep.
I don't think it is.
Yeah, well, yeah, you don't hear it.
She does, though.
I think,
Ken, just if you're sitting, you've got a microphone there at the table. It's only if you're standing that you need to use that mic, so that might help.
can you hear me? Okay. I speak loud enough typically, so maybe that shouldn't be a problem. I think from this point on, from today on, I think and I'll form my other extended staff, we will refer to the intersection of US 5 from Lot 119 and from Lot 142 as the intersection.
Okay.
Okay?
That's a
The
start.
junction? That junction sounds good. Okay. Why don't we call it the junction? So
Okay.
that's the Main Street junction. And
Yeah, okay.
I agree with that. I would prefer that. Secondly, with respect to the components of the traffic signal system that is yet to be installed, I don't want to get too much into the technical parts of this, but there is a radio interconnect for the system that, instead of working off mass timers within the system, it's an interconnect, and it certainly has potential for improving the efficiency of the traffic out there. And we plan on getting the contractor to come back, not wait until April 15th of the spring, and get the contractor back here at the earliest convenience to install those components. Okay? So that's one primary component of the system that's not in place. In addition, I do not believe that the railroad preemption strobes are all up for the side streets down through here. Now, this was an interesting component of the design that we came up with. The system as designed, when a train comes and stops across the Hinsdale track, the signal system prevents southbound movement on Main Street into the intersection. Because if it did, it would block people that were going down on the 119 route. We don't want them going down in there and backing the queue up and blocking the intersection as happened before and creating that safety hazard. So a part of the design is that when the train comes, southbound traffic stops. And those preemptive strobes will tell people on the street and the side streets, if they experience multiple cycles of time, it's telling them the signal's not broke, there's a train crossing. I know that my personal experience with signals as an operator, sometimes I'll pull up to a signal and I'll wait for 3 minutes, and I'll eventually assume that the signal's broken, and then I'll go through it because I've waited there for 3 minutes. But this is a situation where we certainly want the public to know that during those situations when trains do come, the strobes will flash and notify operators that it's not the system, there's a train, and that's why the movements are closed. Your third question?
Flat Street?
Flat Street. There was some issues that we experienced with the Flat Street signal that wasn't becoming fully operational at that time, and at the city's request, being Christmas time and all the confusion down then, it was put on flash mode. And I think at this time, we're thinking that as soon as we get the interconnect up and operational, we'll reset that signal with the interconnect and all the other systems, and that'll be part of the whole testing of all the systems together. So we're going to get that operation.
Would it be possible for you to explain maybe in plain English what the interconnect system is and what it would do, and what the potential of improvements would be?
I think I'll leave that up to Dan to explain.
Hello, my name's Ian Kapoinakis. I work for AECOM, engineering company out of Rocky Hill, Connecticut. What the interconnect does is it allows the 4 intersections that are out along Main Street to talk to one another. And the main point is to allow progressive movement of traffic on northbound and southbound Route 5, and to coordinate the signals. So as you're going either northbound on Route 5, you'll have a green ball going from Malfunction Junction to Flat Street.
That's the junction.
I'm sorry, the junction, the Flat Street to Elliott Street to High Street, and vice versa. The system that we will be providing will be using a radio interconnect. It sends a radio frequency from each of the 4 signals, and it will talk to one another. Does that explain?
Okay. And how does that differ from what happens right now?
Right now, it's on time-based coordination. And inside each one of the signals is an internal clock. And they were synced to be on the same time as one another. And the master location will have a certain time where it sets off for the arteries, the main line to go green. And based on the clock, certain time periods on the clock, whether it be 10 seconds in front of the southern signal or northern signal, what will happen is each intersection will get a certain offset where it is allowed to turn green. So as you're going down Main Street, either northbound or southbound, you'll have green traffic for you to keep moving throughout the corridor.
So currently, each light has a timer, and that's what happens. And so, and what will happen with the interconnect is they'll be kind of connected to one of the masters, and then they'll kind of adjust accordingly.
Well, right now they're based on a clock, so they're not talking with one another. They're set off to go based on what time they were told to go.
Right, okay.
But when the radio interconnect is put in, each signal will talk to each other based on communication, like a moment where the signal gets its information to start, to go, to end.
Okay.
It's given like a radio signal.
And does anybody because this is the 3rd time I've heard this now, and I'm still confused.
So one of the things that I met with Dan and Chris and Ken and Steve prior to the meeting, and one of the other issues that we'll have them talk a little bit about is when the fire department is utilizing getting into the main corridor coming off of obviously Elliott Street, and when they hit their button, it turns everything red, so that affects the flow time, the clock. The other issue that affects the system, and certainly correct me if I didn't hear you properly, is when we have the pedestrians constantly hitting the ball to cross the street. So if you could talk about those two issues a little bit to help clarify, again, what people perceive as a major problem of that traffic, at least heading southbound, and probably within the next 45 minutes backing all the way up to the municipal center.
For the fire preemption, each fire truck in town has a sensor on the front of it. And when they get to a certain point along Main Street and the side streets, the sensor will send a signal to the device on the mast arm, which will allow them to go green. And what it does is it throws it preempts the controller to disengage coordination, and it allows the fire truck in the direction that it's going to have a green light until it gets out of the system. So it can come up any one of the side streets, go green as soon as it makes a right or a left. That sensor will hit the mast arm where the opticon is positioned. It'll allow that light to go green, and as it travels either northbound or southbound along Main Street until it gets out of the corridor. So whenever a fire truck is within the corridor, it will disengage, it will be a good term to use, the coordination.
Is that working now?
Yes.
So that's one issue that is working, right, Chief?
Yes, it is. It is installed. The transmitters, if you will, that are on the trucks, we've got the majority of our trucks now outfitted with them. It seems to be working fine. I only know one problem that locked up the corridor one day when they went through. Other than that, I've heard no complaints and nothing but good things in the other.
Can I ask you a question, because I don't know the answer to this one, is that they're installed on the fire trucks. Is that automatic when you're getting to the intersection? Does that change, or do you have to engage that? Because not every time the fire truck goes out, it's for an emergency situation.
When the emergency lights are on the truck, this transmitter
Okay.
is emitting a...
So if you're going out and it's in a non-emergency situation, it's not affecting the lights at all? You wait at the light like another vehicle? Okay, thank you.
I'm Bruce Nyquist, I'm the traffic and safety manager for V-Trans, and we have them in several places, mostly up in the Burlington area, and it is an optical strobe light with a certain frequency. So that emitter is part, I don't know if it's part of your light bar, if it's in your light bar, so when you throw the switch, it turns it on. The times that we've had issues with it is when it has been in police cars, and you have somebody pulled over on the side of the road, and their strobe is still going on, and it constantly preempts the signal and shuts the whole intersection down. If they're traveling through the corridor, it's not a problem, but if they're stopped in downtown, you might want to be aware of that, because you can probably shut down the whole system.
One of the things that NFPA calls for now is all forward-facing white lights have to go off with the engagement of a brake. So those transmitters shut off, like if they stop in front of 103 Elliott, set their parking brake, that white light will go off, which will release the traffic signals.
And now, could you talk a little bit more about how the foot traffic
I think so.
affects the system?
The coordinated system, what we're trying to do is allow the movement between either northbound or southbound on Route 5. And whenever a side street comes in, it will allow the side street to go out, so the main line will have to stop. So what happens with a pedestrian call is both the main line and the side street will stop. And once that goes through, if there's not a pedestrian call down the road at Flat Street or Elliott Street or High Street, those lights will remain green for the main line. Well, at that particular signal where the head call happens, once the call is done, it has to double cycle where it has to catch up to the other signals. And what it does is it'll take away a few seconds from the side street or the artery until it finally comes back and gets in sync with the rest of the system. So a pet call in a coordinated system has quite an effect on the overall operation for the vehicular path.
I'd add to that as we move forward with this design, again, as I first referred to, we were trying to find a balance between vehicles and pedestrians because of the concerns of each side. And we decided that we'd have exclusive ped phases for the ped crossings, meaning not only when pedestrians cross Main Street, the lights would stop and there would be no cars, they'd be fully protected. We decided as well as an exclusive ped phase for the side street for those people so that there would not be a vehicle coming when they were crossing there. We could have run concurrent ped phases and allowed people to go through the side streets, but they'd be unprotected from vehicles on Main Street turning onto the side street. So that was implemented as a safety provision in the design. So that's why we did it.
Can I follow through with this? If there's a fire at Sam's, and there's a fire truck parked out in front of Sam's with the lights going, is that screwing up the whole system?
No, when they park and engage their air brakes,
Okay.
it shuts that frequency off, so
Okay.
it releases the light.
Once we put the brake on, we're good to go.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Andrea Livermore, Director of Building a Better Brattleboro, which is the downtown program. I guess I have questions, but I also just sort of have a comment, and it's somewhat in summary from a lot of the comments that I've heard of people on the street. And I think it has to do with people don't know what to do. They don't understand, and as a result, they're really frustrated. And they're scared, you know, down in the junction. Coming out of the co-op and people turning left up Main Street, and actually I've seen it happen, and it is a little terrifying. The whole idea that you'd stay to the right, you know, like in a regular four-way intersection that I would think one might do, you pass on the right this way, like we normally do. People cut off to the left to go up Main Street, and they're cutting off people coming up from Hinsdale. And I'm not sure, but I'm hoping, I'll ask this question, are there going to be more exclusive, more lines painted down in that intersection in the spring? Because my guess is you ran into weather problems and we couldn't paint anymore, and I would think that would give direction to people in the intersection. I know it's happened to me as well, of getting in there and thinking, oh my word, I don't know what to do. I know what I used to do. I don't know what to do now. I've had a couple of inappropriate gestures towards me as I sat there baffled in the intersection, and you know, it's that tension. But the point being, I think people don't understand, and just sort of instructions, and I don't quite know how we do that. Maybe a big article in the paper about this is what you do. People at the lights, because I'm probably interacting more with pedestrians, particularly in my role, and there are a lot of people crossing the street, and we're lucky to have a lot of people crossing Main Street in Brattleboro. We want more people crossing the street in downtown Brattleboro. I think people originally didn't know that they had to push the button, so they would wait for it to just happen like it used to, and then they're frustrated because the cycles are longer. I think sometimes what happens is someone else has already pushed the button because there's a lot of people there, so that just reinforces that, oh, it just happens. Sometimes, and this is just where they're located, and I think it's just people need to get used to it, the buttons are back from the intersection, so you do your normal thing. You walk up to the sidewalk and you stand there and wait a minute, where is the button? So I guess just if I can emphasize some way to get out instructions of how we're supposed to do this new system, because my guess is the system will work, but a lot of people are really confused and as a result really frustrated, and that's the kind of stuff that I'm hearing.
I guess I would address that. We've discussed this. The situation on the opposing left turn lanes from 119 and the co-op, 119 co-op thing is one phase of the system because geometrically they line up. And that opposing left turn movement is a common common practice that happens all over Vermont state highways. People need to know that the oncoming traffic is going left and well, and you wait for each other to find your opening. Now, what I think we would propose is that we would put some additional pavement markings out there referred to as cat tracks, because they would be dashed lines for people to know where to go. We cannot put solid lines through the intersection as a regulation, but we will provide additional pavement markings in the spring, and just some other public outreach. I don't know what our mechanism should be, so that we can teach the public the nuances of how this system works and how they should operate through it.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful. Thanks.
Thank you.
Orion?
I'm Orion Brattleboro, Orion Barber from Brattleboro. Yeah. My issue is with the exit from the co-op and the whole issue of being immediately confronted with people coming from Hinsdale, and that you've just been talking about. I think that one of the problems is that not only do we have to make information available to local people, and local means all the surrounding towns, but to the many tourists who come through town and go to the co-op and have not a clue about how this operates. I think it's extremely dangerous right now for 119 and the co-op to release simultaneously. In my view, they should release one at a time. And very often, people from the co-op don't necessarily want to go up Main Street. A lot do, maybe the majority, but some people want to go across and down 142 or over 119. That's not a problem. But going up Main Street and suddenly you're staring at somebody who expects to either go into the co-op or up Canal is a terrifying experience, and it's really dangerous. So I would hope that close attention is given to that.
Well, like Ken said earlier, throughout the state, those two movements align with one another. So if you're making a left turn during the phase for your signal, your call, if you're making a left turn, you need to yield. You can't just run out and make your left turn. You have to be aware of oncoming traffic. Just at any four-way stop where you have a traffic signal, there is a point where a yield has to come into effect. It's both a protective and permissive move. I mean, your through movement is basically, it's actually, I should say, it's a permissive move. Meaning your through movement, your left turn, or your right turn, you have to be aware of traffic coming from the opposing side. It's really no different than if you're making a left turn onto High Street where vehicles coming on Main Street southbound, you need to yield to those vehicles, or if there's an opening, you would enter it.
Yes.
Carol Barber, Brattleboro. When you approach the High Street, Main Street, you have an arrow to tell you when you can go. Seems to me there should be another light at the co-op intersection. When you come out of the co-op, there's another light with a left turn arrow, and that's the only time you can turn left, and you won't be faced with these people. I mean, that's a five-way intersection, and High Street and Main Street is a three-way, and you get an arrow. So can you give us another light and an arrow? I mean, what about the people coming off of 142 if they had an arrow just to go on Canal Street? Just seems like there's a missing light. And the other thing, the whole pushing the button thing for pedestrians, Brattleboro was so well trained to wait at the corner, and when the little bird cheeped, we moved. And now we've got to retrain ourselves, but is there no way to keep a designated time in the system to cross the street the way we used to? Thank you.
Well, jump in, okay, whenever you see fit.
All right.
The movements at the junction,
Yes.
for 119 and the co-op, because of the alignment of those two accesses lining up, it lent itself perfectly to making that one cycle of the intersection. And they have to work concurrently, correct? Yes. So the opposing left, I guess, Dan, what'd you call it? Protected progressive movement.
The permissive, those are permissive movements, meaning you have to yield to other.
So I believe, if they were to run on separate cycles, now you've added one whole additional cycle to the intersection, which inevitably would put it right back to level of service F. Every time, it's hard, this might be hard to understand, but any other added time to this system not only affects where you are here, but everything all the way up through. So if you added 45 additional seconds for a whole another exclusive phase to the system, it would have significantly adverse effects to the operation of the system as a whole. And it was the best that the design offered with the geometry was to improve the mobility at the intersection from a level of service F to a level of service D. But it didn't solve, there's no way that you can do something there with all those 5 legs and all the restrictive queue lengths up Main Street and what have you to a level of service A or B or C, because it's just not, with all the with the traffic and the geometry, it's just not enough room or space to make that happen. So those 2 legs operate on one cycle, and that's why. With respect to the pedestrian movement on Main Street, you can have an exclusive head phase worked into the design, but there again, if it's not preempted and activated, the reason to preempt it is so that it only operates when somebody wants to cross. If it has its own designated time, so that every cycle it comes through, the ped phase will operate at times when there are no pedestrians crossing, and then inadvertently affect through traffic on Main Street. So, is that understandable? Mm-hmm. It's so to add time or make exclusive movement on a separate leg of an intersection, and additionally to an exclusive ped phase, would subsequently create further delays to the traffic on Main Line. And that is the premise of the design. You want to add anything to that, Dan?
Yeah, what I'd like to add is, you're correct, the junction does have 5 legs, and Flat Street, and Elliott Street, and High Street have 3 legs. That's why we were allowed to add an actual protective movement for the left turn lanes there. Because when you have a coordinated system, all the signals need to have the same cycle length. And the junction is controlling that cycle length. It needs a certain amount of time. So the T intersections going up Main Street, they could probably run on a shorter cycle and you would get a better level of service. But we need to coordinate all 4 of them. And that with that extra time, we were allowed to give left turn movements on Main Street the opportunity to go against no traffic, giving them a protected movement. And at the same time, it was allowing also the through to go. So that would be protected as well. So instead of it just being protected permissive, where they're going at the same time, and the left turns have to yield, because of the length of the cycle length at the junction, at the other 3 intersections, we're allowed to add protective movement. That's why you have the green arrow. The green arrow is saying, it's a left turn, I have the right to go, I'm going against no other traffic. If you have a green ball there, you're still allowed to go, but what it's indicating is, yes, I can go, but I need to be aware that there's oncoming traffic that I have to negotiate against.
And that's one of the questions that have been raised from the old system, which was that designated arrow. If you were traveling west off of Main Street, you'd always have that designated arrow without that green ball. The green ball gives you the opportunity to turn left, as you just stated, and the arrow does too, but the arrow is protected where the green ball is you have to yield to oncoming traffic. Dora?
No, just to follow up on what's been said about the crossing signals, I think one of the things that's happening is there's no rhyme or reason to a pedestrian as to when the light's going to change and the crossing is going to appear. You know, I mean, there's issues with people not knowing whether or not the button's been pushed and wondering whether it's working. People get tired of waiting and they cross in the traffic, which is not something we want to see people do. But I mean, it seems to be, I mean, my experience from other places where you push the button and you push the button, you wait a certain amount of time, and it changes. This seems, you know, sometimes you can wait, 5 minutes, and sometimes it changes fairly quickly. And people were really well trained because they knew exactly when in the cycle that crosswalk was going to happen. People knew, they expected it. It was, so that's the question I have is, what I'm hearing you say is that when people press that button, it messes up the timing. But there's a continuous flow of pedestrians on Main Street during the hours of 9 to 6. So in theory, it's never going to work the way it's supposed to during those hours, if I'm hearing what you're saying, because there's always going to be somebody pressing that pedestrian button somewhere that's going to make the that's going to throw the cycle off and then have it to reconfigure.
It will. When you have a coordinated system, the optimum coordinated system, you have no pedestrians at all. But in this case, as Ken explained earlier, what we're trying to do is give you the best vehicular movement that you can, and at the same time, try to incorporate exclusive head phases where pedestrians are not crossing against any traffic. So the ped button, what that does is, if there's no pedestrians out there, then the coordination will run, and it will run until a ped button is called. So there's no way you can control the ped buttons being simultaneously pushed throughout all 4 intersections so that the ped runs at the same time. So then we go back to green on the main line. You wouldn't be able to do that anyways because the distances that you need to cross aren't the same distances. You have to provide people a certain amount, 3.5 feet per second, to get across the road. So, yes, a coordinated system is going to have issues when ped buttons are called. But what can you do here? You can either have exclusive ped phases or not. And one of the things that was proposed to us was we want to protect the people in the town and make sure when they're crossing the streets that they are protected. So it's going to hinder the coordinated movement. Yeah, it will hinder the coordinated movement. But
I do believe that vehicular traffic will not be impeded more with the preemptive pedestrian signals than they would be if there was a exclusive pedestrian cycle in the system. I don't believe that. That's not saying that's not true, but we'll expand on that later.
Sure. If the ped cycle went off every cycle like it did before, and no one was crossing there, then there's, say, 21 seconds of wasted cycle line. With the ped button, if no one pushes the button, that time goes to the artery. So it's giving the main line more time to go. If the ped's pushed, then there's time within that cycle length that is allotted for pedestrians to cross. But if we allow it to happen every time, you'll never have any coordination. If there's a period where there's no peds being, the ped push buttons are being pushed, then it's going to give you some vehicular coordination through Main Street.
Let me ask you this question, and Orion, I'll get to you in a second, about the ball. Now, it's kind of like an elevator. If someone's already pushed the button for the elevator and somebody comes 10 seconds later and they go push the button just because it's lit and they think it's going to come quicker because if you push the button. When we hit the ball, there is no, clarify to me, is there any way that you can put something on the fixture itself that notifies other people coming to the crosswalk that the ball has been activated? Okay, the crosswalk light has been activated. And/or the second part of that question is, if I'm the third person to hit that ball because the light hasn't changed, is there a way to just have it re-engage itself after you do the crosswalk? And so if I hit the ball first,
Once it's pushed, it can't be reactivated until the next.
so it doesn't have, so the second or third person that pushes the ball is not affecting the pets. Okay, so that clarifies that. But is there, so it doesn't make any difference how many people hit the ball until it crosses, you're okay? Okay.
And crossing always occurs after the side roads.
Okay. So would it be beneficial, or could it potentially, could we have a light there? We could put a sign, press ball. I mean, I don't think that people getting to the intersection are so well-trained, as Carol alluded to, they would get there and know that they would have an opportunity to cross. And what's going on now, in our retraining phase, because this isn't the only area that we're having problems with, we have all these people that are going through High Street and plugging up the High Street intersection and the Elliott Street intersection in the southbound corridor, which makes it impossible for those streets to dump off into the main corridor, which is a retraining issue. So getting back to that question, is there a way that you can have something on the light to just notify people that you are assigned that says you must press the ball, other than word of mouth?
On the signal or on the pedestal?
On the pedestal, you must press ball for crosswalk.
There's a sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not an issue, but isn't the latest
The latest,
MTC
they have something that's called a accessible pedestrian signal that is for handicapped pedestrians. And as you walk up, it talks to you. Initially, there's a beeping sound. And it beeps constantly so that sight pedestrians, sight challenged pedestrians can actually find the button.
That's why.
They push the button and there's a light that goes off, but these are a specific type of pedestrian signals. But the issue that we have had in downtown areas is that it drives people crazy because it beeps constantly. I've had people threaten to take a baseball bat.
I think the public, I mean, we probably provide some kind of signage on the ped pole itself, but I think the public, I mean, should know that this is a controlled, preempted ped system. If you want to cross, I don't know, I live in Montpelier. I walk up the intersection of State and Main and Montpelier. I don't know, I live there, I know I've got to push that button. If I don't push that button, that ped phase isn't going to happen. So, I would think that would go without saying. The button's there, the ped pole's there. If you want to cross the crosswalk, you should push the button. Now, if that's not really clear, certainly we can entertain putting up an additional sign on the ped pole that says, this is the button. Push the button to cross.
Press the cross, it says or something.
Okay. Orion?
I don't know whether it's rumor or just my misunderstanding, but I was under the impression that those devices sticking up into the air on all the signals out there are cameras counting cars. Is that true?
Those cameras are detecting cars.
De-
Detecting cars.
Detecting cars?
Yes.
Okay.
They do have the ability, based on controllers, to count cars. Whether or not they're.
We're not counting.
We're not counting cars.
No, but
they have that ability.
okay, so I guess my question is this. Supposing one of the 5 legs of the junction doesn't have anybody coming from that direction for quite a long time. Can that leg tell the others, hey, I don't need a light, knock yourselves out and let everybody else through, and then when somebody wants to come out of the co-op, the system will say, I've got a vehicle wanting to come out of the co-op, and the others will go red and let people out of the co-op. And it's one car. Okay, so let's say it's one car. So that car comes out pretty quick and is gone. Then the system says, I don't have any cars here. Don't need a light. Will it do that?
That's what it does today.
It's doing that now.
It's doing that now.
Is that right?
But it doesn't change, it comes up. When you're sitting at the co-op, your light is coming up with 119. See, this whole system to move traffic, we have to make the junction as efficient as possible. If we, what we call split phasing, if we gave everybody their own cycle, say the co-op, 119, 142, nobody else moved when they were moving. If we do that to the intersection, we make it very inefficient. Because every time you change from one phase of the signal to another one, you have to go through a yellow phase and a red phase. That is what we call lost time when we're timing intersections. The more of those different phases we add in the intersection, we have to add more and more lost time where we can't move traffic. The reason that we have to connect 119 in the co-op is because if we don't, we make that intersection so inefficient that we're going to follow up the rest of Main Street. Because that is really the clog point when we're trying to move traffic through this whole system. Excuse me. If we don't make that intersection as efficient as possible, we make the whole rest of the system that much more of a problem.
But as Van indicated, if no vehicle comes up 142 and isn't there, that leg is not is activated and the other legs are allowed to move freely. So those cameras are to optimize the efficiency of the system.
Okay, I'm a little worried about the definition of efficiency. I think I heard someone say the optimal coordinated system doesn't have any pedestrians. Well, I've got news. We've got pedestrians, we want pedestrians, and some of them are very elderly and slow and cannot walk fast. I want to know whether the system can detect someone crossing from the co-op side to the other side of Main Street, and then, if I'm still remembering how the crosswalk system works, then over to the museum side. I think that's
Plaza
what we
Park.
have to do. Or it's either...
Goes to Plaza.
Okay, Plaza Park. In other words, to get over there, they've got to go across two crosswalks. And some people cannot go fast. And we got to let them through. Is the system going to see them and detect them?
One thing, the cameras don't activate pedestrians. Those cameras are looking at cars in the lanes. They look down on the lanes of the vehicles. If a pedestrian wants to cross one of the crosswalks, they simply activate one of the buttons, and it gives them an exclusive ped phase protected from traffic. Now, in reference to concerns with some people crossing the street slower than others, the ped phases are based upon the MUTCD, which is actually the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which have come up with these values for adequate times, as Van said, 3.5 feet per second, to allow for that range of everyone to cross that crossing safely. So those pedestrian crossings are designed for the safety of the pedestrian.
It recently was changed from 4 feet per second to 3.5 feet per second, allowing more time to get across. And what that's allowing you to cross is one crosswalk. If you were to put in the time to get from one crosswalk to the next crosswalk to the next crosswalk, your cycle lengths would triple in time, and you would have a lot worse levels of service. So what that allows you is to go from point A to B, and it's based on the longest crosswalk within the intersection. So out at the junction, off the top of my head, I believe you have 5 seconds of startup time, and I think it's 23 seconds to cross, because I think the distance is 80 feet. And that's across Route 5.
Okay, my last question is, and this is purely my ignorance, may have dealt with it. Getting from the co-op across to the museum via Plaza Park. You cross one. Is there another button for this elderly person who can right away hit the other button to get across to the Plaza Park? And then it sounds to me like there's going to be a third leg across 142 to get to the museum.
You cannot cross 119 because there was not the available access to the sidewalk by the old railroad station, the museum.
Yep.
And that issue came up in the early parts of the design. How could we provide that crosswalk there so people didn't have to go all the way around? But being that that building is under historic preservation, we could not touch any of that corner. We had to leave that totally undisturbed. So without being able to provide the physical geometric improvements to that corner, we couldn't provide that there. And that was because of historic preservation to that building.
I'm worried about this.
Mr. Mann?
Matt Mann, Wyndham Regional Commission. Historically, one of the bottlenecks of Main Street is at the latches, and it depends on the various times of day, with people queuing up to turn left on into Hinsdale. And I'm wondering, I know that there is an arrow there, and I'm just curious if there's a way that historically and even now with the lights, it still is a bottleneck. If there's a way that you could clear out more of the queue during certain times, peak times of the day, so that then traffic won't back up all the way to Elliott or further back. And you know, like maybe the not rush hours, but the high peak periods of the day. That's it.
The only thing you could do would be to take away time from the artery to allow for a left turn to be longer for that phase. It's just going to affect.
Right, but what's happening is that the backup is affecting all of Main Street. And if you took a little bit more time to clear out the queue, it might actually benefit the whole board.
You're just going to put the strain on another section. Yeah. If you add, I mean, it could affect northbound, it could affect the side street.
Yeah.
Matt, can you expand on that? The latches, I've heard that, I've never heard that.
So when you're going south on Main Street,
Use the mic, please. Thanks.
when you're going south on Main Street and you're coming up to the Flat Street, Main Street intersection, there, and then you go through it, you can veer to the left and get into the left-hand turn lane to go over to New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And what happens is that the amount of space for the queue is 2 or 3 cars. So typically, around peak hours, there's 5, 6 cars that stack up, and so they stack up back into the corner and sometimes into the intersection. So now that is jamming up all of Main Street, so that you can't go around the cars that want to turn left. And it doesn't happen all day, but it happens at peak times. And so if there's, I understand what you're saying, but in terms of looking at the whole corridor and having the lights talk to one another, if there's a way that you can, you can modify the left turn lane to have it be on I don't know, 3 or 5 more seconds to have a couple more cars go through. That might help the bottleneck a little bit more.
John Weisinger? John, you'll be on.
I have 2 questions. I haven't heard these addressed yet, but if you're going down Canal towards Main Street, there's a sign that says there's 3 lanes, a left turn, a straight, and a right. There's also do not turn on red sign. And I've seen, 2 or 3 times, I've seen people with red light, they'll go through that red light to make a right turn onto 142 or to go to Hinsdale. What they're doing is bottling up the intersection. I think there's only 2 lanes there. You know, the sign is a little misleading. And for someone that doesn't know, from out of town, they may think straight is going to Hinsdale, when it's actually going to, and the left turn is to go up Main Street. Because you can't see that entrance to the grocery store, from Canal Street. But if they don't know where they're going, I think that three-way sign is kind of misleading, as well as the do not turn on red, the lack of that sign. People are going through that red light. It's also confusing if you're coming south on Main to make a left turn. You don't know what color that light is for the traffic coming at you. You don't know if it's going to run over you or not. Look at green arrow.
Yeah, one of the
Assume it's green the other way, but I've seen cars stop.
One of the issues we talked about were right on red and no right on red. And when you have vehicles traveling northbound, coming down Canal Street, I have seen people that want to either get to 119 or 142 are thinking that it's right on red there. And what's happening is you have people coming up 142 and heading into the intersection and near misses there. So we had talked about that and making sure that our suggestion, and again, everything that we say here will go back up north. They're going to look at everything and see what is permissible and what's not, and look at signage in there to make sure that some of those near mishaps that we have almost had are addressed. Mr. Is there someone that wanted?
Expand on that a little bit. We've discussed this as a result of a lot of the correspondence that's come in over the last month. I received various correspondence from the town and letters that people have written in. And one thing that we noticed that more than one person mentioned was the fact that, for instance, a car coming down 142 and going north on Main Street, people come up 119 and they don't stop, or they stop briefly and they pull out. And we think we should consider an actual notification of no right turn on red here, so that avoids that conflict. Of course, once that sign is put up, it really is up to the municipality to enforce that so that people don't do it. We can put up signs, we can put up lights, but if people decide to do whatever they want to do, at some point, regulatory conditions of a system need some degree of enforcement. So if we put a right turn on red, no right turn on red on 119, so that they don't do that, I'm not sure everybody's going to stop it, but certainly I think it would have an impact. Subsequently, we've had concerns about the inability for vehicles to come out flat, high, and Elliott and not be able to turn right on red. And what's happening, one situation that was described was people come down Main Street and the queues build up during peak hour, the 4 p.m. time period. And if I come up to a stop bar into an intersection and there's 4 cars ahead of me blocking the intersection, or 3 of the cars blocking the intersection, typically as an aware driver, I won't pull up into that area and cross that intersection because I know that I'm going to block it. Now, some drivers may react like that appropriately, some drivers may not. So there's an issue where I think we need to, we should try to attempt to educate the public on not doing that kind of movement. Likewise, we should consider the right on reds on it, allowing right turn on reds out of the side streets unless a ped phase is activated. Now, I just saw one of these put up at home and I was educated to the actual use of these and where they're permitted and where they're not permitted. But where you have exclusive pedestrian faces on an intersection where somebody goes right on red normally, when the ped phase is activated, the additional sign comes up that lights up. It's a white circle with a bar, a red right, and it says no right turn on red. Excuse me. What that feature would do was it would allow right turn on reds for those side streets to clear those, thank you, except when there's exclusive ped phase. And that would certainly be something that we could put in that I think would also alleviate those issues on the side streets.
Mr. Wilmerding.
John Wilmerding, Brattleboro. I live on High Street, and we frequently walk through the High Street and Main Street intersection. And I think I've seen something that amounts to a problem. I'm not sure how serious it is, but I've been through there enough times since the new lights went up to notice when you're making a left turn northbound on Main Street onto High Street, the new signals seem ambiguous. Previously, we were all conditioned to wait in the left turn lane until we had a left arrow. But now there are two signals. One is above the right lane and one is above the left turn lane, and they both go to a green ball light. So people who are waiting for a left turn, thinking they also have to wait for the green arrow to turn, which is what we always had to do, are now getting honked at from behind and urged to go through the intersection because there's now a perception that you have a green light and you should go through. So I just wanted to draw attention to that and see if that's been looked at.
We've discussed that, Dan, why don't you respond to that? The green arrow green that we talked about.
At that particular intersection, you're going northbound, you come up here, say your stop, High Street goes, and you're in the left turn lane, and two green balls come up. Well, yes, you're allowed to make a left turn there. Before you do so, you need to look across and see if you have any oncoming traffic. What that is that's a permissive left turn movement, meaning you have open time to go, you're allowed to go. You have to wait, you have to yield until that opening is there. Once that phase is done, it's going to go to a protected only movement. The green ball will go to a green arrow. When you see the green arrow, that's allowing you to go freely. The other side of Main Street is going to be stopped. And that happens on Elliott Street, it happens on High Street, it happens on Flat Street, and it also happens southbound on Main Street for you to take a right turn to either 142 or 119.
Yeah, before you had signs up that said, only turn on the green arrow, those signs were taken down.
Right.
And now this is supposed to allow it. It's just an educational public. So you're allowed to go left with a green ball, as long as it's open. And the green arrow, once the green arrow is activated, now you've got exclusive left turn rights. Nobody's going to impede you. There are signs that we can put up that more clearly designate that, and we've identified that as an additional feature to put in the project.
Thank you.
Yes.
My name is Ann Wright. I live in Brattleboro. I have some questions for myself as a citizen, but also I was asked by Alex Jury to come and speak on behalf of him this afternoon because he couldn't be here. One of the questions that I have for you has to do with that green light at the entrance to the co-op going left and also coming up from 142. I'm unclear based on what I heard you say today. If there's no traffic coming up from 142 or 119 to turn left, will cars sitting in the co-op's lot not get a green light? You know, if there's somebody at the co-op lot who wants to turn left, but there's no cars coming up from Hinsdale or Vernon that want to turn left, does the system not recognize the cars sitting at the co-op's entrance waiting to get out, go north on Main Street?
Whether it be a car sitting on one of the lanes on 119 or the co-op, when that call happens, when the video detection detects the vehicle there, when it's turned, that movement will go.
Okay. So cars sitting at the co-op waiting to turn left will also trip that mechanism to get a green light. Okay, I wasn't clear about that. And I just wanted to, this is one of Alex's particular comments about the crosswalk that goes over to the museum, or actually the crosswalk that doesn't go over to the museum from the bottom of the hill there where the Barrow and Fisher Oil Company is. He did want to just say that he has seen several times many people crossing right there, whether it's safe or whether it's not safe. People don't want to cross Main Street, the co-op lot, Main Street again, and 142 by Plaza Park. So they just walk across, whether there's a crosswalk there, whether it's safe or not. That was just something I know that he's concerned about.
You know, as I previously indicated, you know, we realized
Right.
that the validity of people's need to want to cross there, but we were unable to impact that historic structure and build a sidewalk there to receive that ramp.
Ken?
And because of that, we were unable to provide that feature in the design.
Ken?
But if somebody pushes a button, you know, all lanes of the traffic's gonna be shut down for 27 seconds.
So they could cross theoretically, yeah.
One of the things,
But it would take multiple crosses.
one of the things that's going to happen with the Union Station project is we know that there are people that come in on the train and they're actually, you have to jaywalk to get over on a sidewalk across the street. And so what is going to happen is that there will be a crosswalk put in down there so that people will be able to cross and then walk up the hill to get to Main Street. So, but that'll be part, that wasn't part of this phase. It will be part of the Union Station phase coming up within the next year, right? Yeah. So,
Great, thank you. I'll be sure to let Alex know.
okay.
The other thing that he's concerned about is the pedestrian crossing at Flat Street. I know with the blinking light that's been going on, as am I, because I cross there frequently because my office is right there across from Sam's. I'm unclear, when the light is blinking at Flat Street and you push the ped button, does it stop traffic, or when it's blinking, does the system not recognize that the ped button is pushed?
It doesn't recognize it.
I come to it.
It what? It does not.
It does not work when the signal's not flashing.
So when the light on Flat Street is flashing, you can push all you want, but you're not going to ever get, so then basically we're all just...
Well, we're going to make that signal, we're going to operate that signal once we get the interconnect.
Right. I was just, so for now, that's why when you push the button, nothing happens.
Right.
Which kind of leads me to my next comment, which is about your comment about the fact that if there's a button there, people should know to push it. I grew up in this area and I've lived downtown for 12 years. I didn't know until I heard you say you had to push the button that you need to push the button, because I pushed it at the blinking light, nothing happens. I pushed it at other places, and depending on what the traffic is, there's no rhyme or reason to how long you have to stand there and wait.
So, Ann, do you have,
You know what, why don't, we're going to go back as a design team, and we'll look at the operational buttons on these things, and let's see what potential available additional features we can look at that can improve this.
That sounds fair. But I would advocate for signs at the ped buttons that say you must push to cross.
we talked about that, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Dora?
I just have a question. Does this system have the ability, I know in some systems, when you press the button, it's got like a counter that lets you know when it's going to change. I mean, it's got the counter now for the crossing itself. But, I mean, that might help with some of the confusion, because people would actually know when it was supposed to change, and they, you know, because, you know, again, as I said earlier, I mean, people are getting confused, there's no rhyme or reason to it, so it's sort of, once you push it, how long is it before it's activated? Exactly. I mean, and that actually would help with ADA folks, too, because they would know when it's going to change, and can get out into to the crosswalk more, you know, quickly if they know that it's going to change, because it's a, you know, to people who are elderly or moving slower, it takes them a while. And if, you know, again, the old system, people knew exactly when it was going to change, so you knew when you were going to be going out, and now you don't. So if that's a feature that it could have, I think that would really be helpful.
That would help me a lot. You have to have a sense of humor around it.
How come you asked me to carry you?
Is there any more questions from the public for Ken, Barbie, or?
I just have a couple of things that I don't think have come out. One is the concern, I know I've seen a few letters of not being enough time for people coming from the side streets to go out, and what's happening is people are jumping the light, and that's part of what's causing the bottleneck. You know, so I don't know, you know, Matt was asking about the adjustment of that one intersection, but I think just a slight bit more time to get, you know, I don't typically drive down there because I live close to town, but I have on occasion, and it really is only sometimes 2 or 3 cars that can get through the intersection, and that, you know, that causes a bottleneck in all areas if it, you know. So that's definitely one thing, if you could look at that. And the other is just the confusion about whether or not the signal is seeing a car. And I know that there's a lot of adjustments that have to happen on a lot of those things, but certainly at some of the ones in town, you know, I've sat at them for 10 minutes and it doesn't change. The car has to be in the exact right spot, and if it's too far forward, too far back. So just looking at that would be helpful. Just, I mean, I've heard that people are calling the police department saying that they're, you know, that they're sitting at the light and they're going to go through because it hasn't changed yet. So.
During coordination, if you're sitting at the light and you start off at the beginning, you have to wait for the max recall for your phase to go up. So there could be a certain amount of time where you see where they wait. If you're at the stop bar, you should be detected. The zone goes maybe 2 feet in front of the stop bar, about 25 feet back. So if you're at the stop bar and there's a line of traffic behind you, that video camera should be detected.
Well, I think it's more when there's not a line of traffic. I mean, if there's a line of traffic, generally it's detecting, because if it's not detecting the first car, it's detecting the next car. I think it's more sort of those when off hours, when it's not a lot of traffic and the main street lights are long green and people are waiting at the side streets to go. I think that's more the issue.
Well, that issue there is, and what I discussed with Ken and Chris was possibly trying to recall the non-active period where if the main line doesn't, traffic stops or there's nothing going, and the side street, the call will come up almost immediately. What will happen is you'll have your minimum time for your main line, say 15 seconds, and then as cars are going through, if nothing happens after 3 seconds, then the side street will get its time. So you won't have the maximum, say the maximum is set at 40 seconds. The side street won't wait. What will happen is the minimum time for the main line will go, the time which the system waits for another call to come in, whether it be 2 seconds or 3 seconds, that call doesn't happen, the side street will get to go immediately. That doesn't happen during coordination because you have so many vehicles traveling. You set the artery on max, giving it the full amount of what its allotted time is for the cycle. Does that answer your question?
Well, one of the things that we talked about, what Dora's talking about is what we talked about before the meeting, is like the 119 corridor. That light is about 9 or 10 seconds, and so only a couple of vehicles, and we talked about expanding the time there. And any time that you are adding time to any one of the tributaries, you're affecting the whole cycle of traffic. And so that's one of the issues that we were trying to say, can we have more time in 142 and 119 and maybe even High or Elliott Street so you can get into the main thoroughfare. But when you're looking for more time there, you're affecting the whole cycle of time. I can tell you, and I think that you've had in some of the correspondence, that people are extremely happy in the 142 and 119 corridor getting into the main thoroughfare is because they don't have to play Russian roulette to get out there. It's because they have a designated time and unimpeded access into the main thoroughfare. So not everything is bad. It's just getting retrained and understanding that some of our inefficiencies, if we can fix them. And so I think actually today has been very beneficial, and I'm glad that you came down here today. And is there anyone else on the board that has anything else? One more thing, Dora.
And I don't know if there's anything that we can do about this, but I think one of the reasons, I think there's actually more cars traveling on Main Street now because they've lost their shortcut. Because the light at the junction means that you're no longer saving any time if you're going around the side streets and coming out around Elm Street and turning left at the stop sign. I certainly, that was my way to get to the co-op and avoid going through Main Street at all. I used to go that way, and now, of course, you're hitting a light and you're hitting traffic and you're hitting people turning and coming from all over the place. And so that shortcut doesn't exist anymore, and since the shortcut doesn't exist, there may be more people going on Main Street. There's nothing we can really do about that. It's just sort of an observation.
Jesse, did you want to say something?
Just one thing. Obviously, we're dealing with the punch list now, and it's kind of the real nitty-gritty details. But I would like to just say that my perspective of the overall project in terms of when it started to finish, it seemed to work very smoothly. And I want to congratulate you for that and the responsibility. I really feel that, the pavement at night worked well. I think for the most part, I didn't get any calls or emails or, complaints about that. I think the overall, paving and getting the pavement up and then new pavement down and whatnot, other than a couple glitches in terms of there were, a lot of time getting the poles in and whatnot in a couple places. Other than that, it seemed to work very smoothly. I want to say that I think we're talking about obviously some nitty-gritty details at this point, but that overall I think it was done pretty well and pretty smoothly. Thank you.
Yeah, I would concur. Jesse is right. I think even the sidewalk phase, which I don't know what's going on here. Maybe that's the heat that we're looking for in this room. Went well. So, John? No? You're all set? Okay. Well,
I'm sure we're fine.
I thank you
It'll be
for
fine.
coming down, and we'll be in communication with you, Ken. Thank you. Thank you, Van. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Bruce. As we have two more items here. I'm going to ask that someone make a motion that we take the C, table the utilities. At this point, we'll pick a. Actually, we will reschedule it for Tuesday to talk about setting a date, which we have a meeting next Tuesday.
So table until Tuesday the 2nd? I mean, Tuesday the 1st.
Tuesday the 1st.
I would just don't table it, just don't take it up.
Oh,
Because if you table it, it has to be
don't-
a date
we
and
don't-
time
we don't
certain,
table,
so
okay.
just don't take up that. It's so,
Move it to Tuesday and then we'll...
then you have the town meeting warning.
Town meeting warning, and if you open your, open this up to Article 17, open your packet up of the, and if you see 17, there was some confusion as to during the budget cycle, and as I was talking to Barb today, I wanted to make sure that this was in here as an article, as we had discussed, and there was some confusion as to should it have been in the general fund budget and/or were we talking about doing it, taking it out of the reserve fund? And I said, in my notes, I had this down as taking the $30,000 down out of the reserve fund.
And I went back and not that I questioned it, but I went back and I listened to the audio, and the whole conversation was about taking it out of the unreserved, undesignated monies. And so what you'd want to do then is, prior to approving the warning, you'd want to just maybe have a motion that would authorize taking that money out of the, taking $30,000 from the audited unreserved, or have a motion to take to representative town meeting the question of using the $30,000 unreserved, undesignated fund balance to offset the funding of the post-employment benefit reserve fund. That would change, it changes your current taxes and makes it $30,000 less.
That was in the budget. is in the,
No, the budget was a balanced budget, and it shouldn't be a balanced budget. If it's coming out of unreserved undesignated, it shouldn't be a balanced budget. It should show what this budget shows, which is a negative 30,000 now. So your current taxes is actually lowered by 30,000, bringing you to about a 3.1 increase over 3.1% increase in the current taxes when compared to the actual of FY 2011.
closer than.
All right.
So do you want a motion now?
Yes, prior to approving the warning, I think it would be best if the board made that motion, so then that would be reflected in the budget that we put into the town meeting.
I'm happy to make that motion if you'll make sure I'm doing it correctly too.
What, yeah, what you'd like is to make a motion to use 30,000 of the unreserved undesignated
Funds for the purpose of funding the post-employment benefit reserve fund.
and taking that question to town meeting, representative town meeting.
So moved.
Further discussion?
Yeah, I apologize. I really didn't remember that come from the unreserved.
Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. 4-0.
Okay. And then with the warning, just to recap, for all of those who stayed, in addition to your typical questions, the only ones that are not typical is question 4 for the schools. They're requesting to establish a reserve fund. They had a surplus in FY10 from their audit of about 348. And then you'll see the next two questions that they did. They want to put 148,846 of that surplus into a reserve fund, and then they want to put 200,000 of it to offset taxes. So their budget will actually be off balance as well by about 200,000. So those are three that are not common. Number 8, just to point it out, we had always asked to act on the audit report, and there's actually always 2 audit reports in there, the town and the town school, so we just pluralized it. You have the 3 trustees for the board have been nominated come from the board, from the Brooks Memorial Library Board of Trustees. The grant, Capital Grant Review Committee, Review Board, I was going to ask the people who nominated, who last year that was set at town meeting, and people volunteered for it. And I think one was Lynn, and one was Fagelson. That's it. Yeah, I think you're right. I was just going to, does the board want me to ask those 2 again, or just leave it to town
Do they
meeting?
have to be town meeting reps?
Not necessarily, no.
Because Lynn won't be a town meeting rep.
Okay. Or just leave it to town meeting.
I mean, whether you ask them again or not, town meeting has the, so just putting it up to town meeting and saying, asking for nominations, I think, because even if their names are mentioned, town meeting can put whoever they want as.
Right. The next then would be the request for us to establish a reserve fund under the control of the Select Board for the purpose of funding in advance post-employment benefits. That's the OPEB, the 30,000 that you want to start. And that's the reserve fund, Jesse, so that's how you indicate that it's separate. And then the question on the 30,000. You then have those questions come before the budget, so in case they change the budget. Then you have question 19 is the standard question. Question 20 is for the downtown district. Question 21 is the first year that we are implementing the special assessment on the property to start paying back the loan for the tri-park. Those loan payments are due I think the first one is March 1 of 2012, so that's why that's in there. Then you have the 3 requests for tax exemption on the municipal portion, only as it was indicated. And then you have, I hope you guys are all going to approve this. Then you have the human services funding, and we've had that checked twice. Then you have climate protection, and then the end would be a bond vote for this. And just to clarify, we actually are looking at doing this through a lease, but we're still looking at getting the approval. Just because it's such a large number, I think it should get the approval of representative town meeting.
The budget is what, question 8?
And the budget is, in the questions, it's just to set the rate, and it's not
18,
until
right?
we actually, do
To see
the
how much
town, do the actual motions that we put in the amounts.
Yeah.
Same is true with the school budget.
Yeah.
So, this is it as it stands. This would get warned, then it would get actually posted, probably, it has to be posted on the 28th, and I think Annette's looking to do it on the 27th.
Okay.
So if we move it now and we vote for it, it will be posted in a timely fashion, right? So we have to approve it tonight.
It has to be approved, it has to be approved before it can get posted.
I would move approval of the proposed town meeting warning as printed.
Oh, can I just, for discussion, can I just clarify that under the regular general town meeting on Article 2, that was one of the ones that was posted, and so that's, just to point that out, that's not typical either.
And that's for the ballot on...
And that was a petition question, yes.
Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the annual town warning signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 3-0. And I will accept a motion for adjournment.
Could I ask one thing
Sure.
before we adjourn? There was, I thought, quite a bit of confusion at the meeting on Saturday as to the library board question pertaining to who appoints the director and such. How difficult, it wouldn't be difficult at all, I'm sure, for you just to put together how much right now town funding goes into that, the operating budget for the library, and if there are any, I know there's some donations, but I don't think that many. Is that possible just to break out? 'Cause I think the public or people at the town meeting might not have realized that the majority of the money that funds the library comes from the general fund. Okay.
That's a request by the board?
Yes.
Sure?
Yeah, that
I was
was...
just going to say, I think they did, but, I think it's important to have that anyway, so.
Where is that?
Okay.
I was just
I just,
looking.
the library.
Yeah.
I just want to apologize for being late, my battery's dead.
They're right above, it's right here, but that's without benefits.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, in the budget, just part of it, Martha, is $593,000, yeah,
How much?
$740. $593,740.
That comes from the general fund.
And there's actually more to that comes out of the general fund because that doesn't include benefits. So
Salary, benefits, so on and so forth.
Yeah, well, there is salary in there, but not benefits.
But not the benefits.
Not
right?
benefits or insurance.
And if
right?
I look at that, I probably can come up to see what donations are or whatever. But that wouldn't be any different than when the town clerk charges for fees and such. That shows there as income.
Right.
Right. There is revenue from the library that comes in, but not all revenues that come into the library are the jurisdiction of the town. They have grant funding and...
Right, oh, I understand that. Yeah. But that's true with any department.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I think we're all set.
I hope we adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, BCTV, for providing this service today.